All right, today we're going to do something a little bit differently during announcements. There's a lot of really cool things that are going to be happening in 2024, and so we really wanted to take some time as a church to just slow down and really think about those things together. As most of you know, this is my first year here, but as Zeke mentioned, every year the staff gets together at the end of the year and goes over the church's values and try to focus on what we want to see happen in 2024. So if you're not familiar with our values, they are authentic disciples, equipped saints, loving family, faithful stewards, local witnesses, and global servants. So all of them are important, but like I said, at the end of the year, we really go over them and say, God, what two do you want us to focus on? What two do you really want us to see made more real in 2024? So before I talk more about those, I want you to humor me with something. I've pulled this up here on Google Maps. This is our building, our property. And I want you to imagine something. As you're looking at that, I want you to pretend this, for some magical reason, we blinked out of existence and poof, we're gone. Our building, all of our programming just instantly vanished. No more worship services, no more youth, no more mums, no more Awana. It's just all gone. So put yourself in those shoes. So what would be the implications of that? I want you to think about that as I ask these next two questions. So the first one is, what would be the local impact of that? How many people in the city would say, man, this town really went downhill after all those Christians left? On the other hand, how many people wouldn't even notice we're gone? I think if we were to ask people, we'd probably find both of those answers to be true. We'd probably find out some things that are really encouraging, but some things that are a little heartbreaking. The second question I have is similar to the other one, but let's pretend Heartland and all the people magically disappeared, but this time except for you and your family. Poof, now you're sitting in an empty parking lot by yourself. You suddenly feel the weight of everything that's gone. So that leads me to my second question. What would be the personal impact of Heartland's disappearance? For you personally and for your family, what changes? God would still be there. You'd still have the opportunity to pray to him and learn more about Jesus. But for you personally, what's different? What void is left in your heart where this building used to be? Well, the truth is, we're not magically disappearing. In fact, we're growing. I found these pictures in the closet, and I decided to bring them out in the foyer. But Lord willing, steel will arrive here pretty soon, and this building's going to change quite a bit. Rooms are going to get taped off. Walls are going to come down. New walls are going to go up. And there's going to be a flurry of activity inside and outside of this building. So this is a big moment for us as a church, one we don't want to let slip by, one that we really want to pause and think about this third question I'm going to ask, because I promise you, if we're not asking it, the community will. But that question is, what are you guys going to do with all that building? Already, arguably, we probably have the nicest building in town. And so the question is, what are we going to do with it? Why do we need this building? And so as a staff, as we were wrestling with that question, it really revealed the two values that we wanted to pursue in 2024. So the first one is local witnesses. As authentic disciples, we will glorify God and find joy in Christ when we find need-oriented ways to share the good news of Jesus Christ for those in our region. We want to be a church that when the people of Central City think about us, they think, man, I don't know much about them or their God, but I am so glad they're here. We'll unpack this value more in the coming months, and I hope for both of these values that we'll be providing monthly or bi-monthly opportunities to engage with these concepts. But for the rest of the morning, we're going to land on our second value, loving family. We will glorify God and find joy in Christ when we connect with others in a way that allows intimacy, transparency, and mutual encouragement. We're committed to living in vibrant relationships with the greater community, as well as relating more deeply with one another through small groups. This morning, we're really going to focus on those last two words, small groups. Some of you might know this or have heard rumors of it or whispers of it, but we're in the process of launching a small group ministry for Heartland called Life Groups. There was no intention to keep anybody in the dark with this. The intention was to actually not roll out a half-baked idea. As you can imagine, there's a lot of kinks and logistics to work out for something like this. And the last thing we wanted to do was invite 400 people before we got at least some of them worked out. So I'm sure you're asking yourself, but Bob, what is a life group? Or Bob, what kind of life group are you rolling out? Well, I bet if I handed everybody in this room a different piece of paper and everybody wrote on it what they thought a life group was, or more importantly, what they want a life group to be, I bet we'd have as many different opinions as we did pieces of paper in this room. And to make things more complicated, for those of us that have been in church for a long time, we all have different expectations for what works and what doesn't work for our life group. And so I want to talk about 3 attributes that are often talked about with life groups, what people think are effective models. The first one is that they need to be flexible. I'm probably stating the obvious here, but Americans view church differently now than they did 40 years ago. And every day it's changing. And even though the gospel never changes, we need to have ministries that are self-aware and reflective and observant. So a good life group needs to have the freedom to adapt and meet new opportunities. The next one is they need to have structure. When I relaunched life groups at Lincoln Berean Church, we had just been off a decade of people pretty much being able to do whatever they wanted, and it was a mess. Life groups are really hard to find and even harder to join. Not to mention some weren't even teaching good theology. So a good life group is built for effectiveness and not easily derailed. The third one is depth. Life is too hard and the gospel is too important for these to be social clubs where everybody feels like they have to fake it or put on a brave face. So a good life group should make it easy and exciting to grow closer with Jesus and other believers. But I'm sure as I was talking, you realize that a lot of those attributes are at odds with each other. The further you go into closer to one, it puts you in danger of the other ones. Additionally, each attribute in itself is a bit of a double-edged sword. A life group can be so flexible that it becomes meaningless and unstable. It can be so structured that it becomes soulless and rigid. It can be so deep that most people don't even want to get into the pool. So what we're trying to present is a model here that's within this safe zone. It's flexible, structured, and has depth without erring one way or the other. I don't have time this morning to roll out every detail or answer every question, but I did want to go over what usually is the most frequently asked questions. The first question is, how big are they? Life groups are 8 to 12 people over the age of 18, male and female, with varied stages of life and spiritual maturity levels. The goal is that they're small enough that people feel like they can be vulnerable, but not so small that we have a huge waiting list of people trying to get in. The next question is, what material will be covered? We're not going to ask you to read a stack of books or do a bunch of homework. For one, we know everybody's busy, but more importantly, I think a lot of times we just skim from topic to topic to topic without actually really thinking about how to apply that information into our lives. So we will be providing sermon questions. We have a team that will be writing questions based off of each week's sermon that life groups will use to dig deeper into to find a way to apply it to their lives. The next question is, what's the time commitment? As I mentioned above, a lot of the prep work for life groups is going to be done just by attending church on Sunday morning. But as far as dates go, we're not asking anybody to sign their name in blood or write it in a stone tablet. However, we do want people to make a 7-week commitment. We want people to really invest during that 7 weeks and try to connect and be that supporting, loving family with each other. If that works, that 7 weeks, 4 times a year, we'll be offering more sessions. The next 2 questions are linked. How can I join a life group? And what if my life group doesn't work for me? Well, between every session, there'll be off-ramps and on-ramps. These will be an opportunity that say, you've met for 7 weeks, you've tried, but you just don't feel that chemistry. It's just not there. Or maybe there was that chemistry, but the schedule's changed and that night no longer works in your calendar. Well, there'll be off-ramps and on-ramps. And so in the same way, if you're new to this church and you're trying to find a way to connect it, you'll be invited to a life group 4 times a year. But really, the goal of off-ramps is there's a guilt-free opportunity to try another group if your group isn't working. So speaking personally for me as a leader, if you find that loving community with me and my life group, that's great. However, if you need to try another life group to find that, I'm just as happy for you. Lastly, how are life groups being supported? Well, every group will have a trained leader. In fact, after service today, some of the leaders that are helping us launch this ministry are going to be having a training. Additionally, the other thing that we'll be providing are coaches. Every leader will have a coach. So in the same way we're asking leaders to support their group and to put in the effort to be a loving family for them, the church is going to provide people to support and lead them. By providing leaders and coaches to every group, we'll ensure that we're all rowing in the same direction. Now, this isn't some high-pressure sales tactic. We're not going to force you to sign up today. Actually, the opposite is true. Sign-ups won't be open until March 17th. We wanted to get this out in front of people to give them time to think about it, pray about it, and to ask questions. Please feel free to reach out to Nathan, Travis, or I if you're wrestling with this idea, but we'd really love to talk to you about it. Right now, our current groups are meeting in order to prepare more seats. Additionally, to be able to have enough leaders, we're going to have to find and recruit and train new leaders to be ready by this March 17th date. So really, if I was to sum up everything that we talked about this morning, everything from the values to the new building addition to life groups, it would be this. We want this building filled with strangers, but we don't want them to stay that way for long. Our dream and our hope for 2024, that if somebody's driving by this building, they'd know that they're welcomed here, that they're invited here. And when they timidly walk through those doors for the first time, they're met with a loving family. And more practically, we can say, hey, there's 8 to 12 people that would come and love to do life alongside of you. You don't have to do life alone anymore. I also want to say that if you've been going here for a while and you haven't experienced that loving family, I've got a couple things I'd like to say. The first is, I'm sorry that's been your experience. But life groups is just as much for you as it is for longtime members and first-time attenders. I'd also want to say, help us do better for the next person. Sometimes I think we've all felt what it's like to be on the outside, and that can either cause a pain that makes us bitter, or it can help us drive us to love people more. And so that's my challenge to all of us this morning. How can we love each other more as we move into this new year?